I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job explaining myself, but I think that's really great writing. Hello. Hello, welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. This is Chris. Today we shall be discussing The Four-Sided Triangle. There you go. Four-Sided Triangle by William F. Temple. While discussing The Four-Sided Triangle, get myself a chai latte. This comes from the British Library Science Fiction Classics. It originally published in 1949. This is a 2018 copy. And this is the cover of when it came out in the magazine, Amazing Stories. And so you can see there two women being in a machine. That's a really fun cover. Wish they put that on this cover. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's just a really good piece of literature. Not just science fiction, but actually good writing, actually telling a story. I like finding random old mass market paperbacks and hardcovers and stuff that are 50, 60, 70 years old. However, I think I need to pay a little bit more attention to reprinted classics like this. There's two other books that I have read. These are different printers, different series. This is the British Library Science Fiction Classics. This one is SF Masterworks, an imprint of the Orion Publishing Group Ltd. The Stars My Destination by Alfred Bester. This is a masterwork, science fiction masterwork series. This is NYRB Classics literature, inverted world, but it is science fiction. So, and our New York Review book. So this one was originally published in 1974, and this was republished in 2008. And this one, published in 1956. 1999. So they are different publisher houses, so different editors and stuff, but they're finding old science fiction books. Some old, some not quite as old, but 50s, 70s, 40s, and they're reprinting them, and they are pretty good. The Four-Sided Triangle is the story of a love triangle that got complicated due to fun, crazy machines. Basically, we follow this doctor. He's our narrator. The only character who is not a member of this love triangle. He adopts a boy when the boy's a teenager, gets him to go to college. Him and one of his friends from college come back to town, create the dump, which is basically their mad science fiction lab. They call it a dump because it's an old building that's falling apart that they basically are renting out in order to do crazy science experiments. Into this group, the doctor, as his role as a doctor, comes across this young lady who is an orphan as well, and she is suicidal, and he's trying to bring her connection to the human world, and thinks that Bill, his adopted son, would be a good influence, and that they could be friends. They're all around the same age. So he brings Lena over to the dump to meet these two young boys. So we have Lena. She's crazy. She's an artist temperament without being an artist. She wants to kill herself because she cannot find any art that she's good at. She's tried painting. She's like, I don't have the knack for that. She's played piano. She's done all these she's tried writing, literature. None of these things seem to work out for her. And then we have Bill. Bill is the doc's adopted son, who very intelligent, very disorganized, works very chaotically. He has leaps of logic that jumping ahead, figuring out how things work, and then problems will come up, and he'll get frustrated, and he'll start doing something else. And then Rob is his friend who grew up. He's British aristocracy. Grew up with expectations of how to act. Stiff upper lip, all that stuff. Always you start something, you work your way through it. And so, not quite as brilliant as Bill, he goes and he takes the things that Bill's working on and slowly works his way up. Starts from the beginning, very meticulous, works his way through. And then we have a love triangle. both Rob and Bill fall for Lena. She's crazy in the way that men seem to appreciate having that little bit of that artistic temperament, fun type thing, right? And she falls for Rob. Bill's also there and falls for her. And Lena and Rob go off and get married. The project that Bill and Rob are working on is a reproducer. You take something, a work of art, for example, put it inside this big tube, this big canister, and then they explained it through resistance, that they put electricity through it, and then the putting their electricity through it that has different resistances, they can then use that to copy it atom for atom, which I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't make sense, but that's how it's done. And you have a copy of it next to it. Bill, who has fallen madly in love with Lena as well, decides he needs to use this to reproduce life. So he goes and captures some rabbits out of the yard and figures out a way to reproduce them. The reproduced rabbit is lifeless. It's warm, has all the stuff it needs to be alive, but the heart isn't beating. And so he, with the doctor's help, is able to resuscitate the rabbit. He convinces both Rob and Lena that he is in love with Lena and he needs a copy of her. So they go and they put her in the machine and make a copy of her. And as you can imagine, things do not go well. Basically, what it comes down to is they don't make a copy of Lena. Well, she's in love with Rob, but they haven't done anything. They haven't got married. Like they make a copy of Lena after they got married. It took a few months for everything to happen. They got married, they went on their honeymoon, and they'd lived together as husband and wife for 3 months. And here they are, literally in their honeymoon phase. They make a copy of her. They call the copy Dot. Say that it was Lena's twin sister, and since Lena's not from town, people believed it. But Dot goes crazy because here she is. Imagine being married to someone for 3 months and then all of a sudden you wake up and it was to your own volition, like you agreed to it, but all of a sudden you married for 3 months and all of a sudden you're with someone else and you said that you would go and marry this other person. And so chaos happens. I'm not really telling a whole lot because this is a book that I think you need to read. This is a quality book and I don't want to give out too much. It's also not a super, since I'm telling you it's a good book, and you should read it. It's not a super happy book. Let that be a warning. But I do think it's a beautiful book. It shows the issue with Bill's mentality of jumping into things without thinking them out fully. Just jumping, getting excited, hopping in, doing things. You can easily get over your head, especially if you are playing with things you don't quite understand. It's almost like Frankenstein, where Dr. Frankenstein created something, realized he made a mistake and goes out to fix it because he's decided to play with life, something he couldn't understand. It's not as dark as Frankenstein, but it definitely goes there. There's also lots of discussions in this book between the different characters. They are all quite different, all have their own personalities, in different worldviews and their different perspectives of what's going on. And I think Mr. Temple here, Mr. William F. Temple, does a good job where these discussions feel like discussions that would have happened given the situation they were in, and they feel like conversations that both sides feel like they are actually having this discussion. Both sides believe what they are saying, which you don't always get. You don't always get good dialogue. One of the first things I noticed when reading this book was some of the dialogue felt like it was movie dialogue, but in a good way, right? It's just people acting in top form. They are truly themselves while they are having this conversation. And that's what it feels like here. So this is Dot talking to the doctor when she realizes that things are not going well. Never mind, and it's not that she realizes, when she realized it and she's not able to hold it back anymore. Never mind, Doc, the past is the past. It is the present that is so terrible. I have never known anything like this. Rob is like the fruit that hung over Tantalus's head. So near, apparently so easy reach, and yet light years away. Sometimes with him I forget my role of Dot. I begin, without thinking, to talk and laugh about some little episode that happened to us. To Lena and him, rather, on the honeymoon in Cornwall. It seems so real to me. I've always managed to check myself in time. I don't think he noticed. But someday I'm going to give myself away. I've not been used to watching myself. It comes as a strain to me, and spoils what there is that I could make of this life. As much as my hopeless love, it is the conflict of trying to keep up and act all the time against my natural inclination to just be what I am and be accepted as that. Greatest of all, this hypocrisy of pretending to love Bill when my whole being cries aloud for Rob. I shall always remember that sickening moment when I came to consciousness after the process. I opened my eyes to see that glass cover hanging over me, drawn up and away, when my last memory had been of it descending to extinguish me like a candle snuffer. I could not think where I was at first. Then I remembered and wondered whether the experiment had been a success. And all at once a horrid doubt struck me. Was I Lena, or was I the other? I think that's really great writing. And later in the book, when Doc is talking to Rob, trying to figure out whether or not these copies are the same thing or whether they're different things. Listen, Doc, he said in a strained voice, this is my final attempt to make you see my point of view. You can't understand why Lena and Doc seem so fundamentally different to me. Well, suppose the reproducer had been large enough to make an exact replica of Westminster Abbey, and all the original Abbey was destroyed by some disaster. Could you fool yourself that the copy could take the place of the original? The actual material of the stones has no inherent value. It's accumulated sentiment attached to them that affects us. It's the memory of all these events which actually have happened within those walls which makes the place so dear to the Englishman. One walks into the building and the past envelops him like a tangible presence. The very air there is heavy with history. You feel an almost ecstatic affinity with the slow centuries that have passed in there. You are linked to them. You may touch the very stone that Edward the Confessor touched 900 years ago. You may walk on the ground William the Conqueror walked on. Think of the history of the Coronation Stone. Even Cromwell had reverence for it. When Nelson went into the attack off Cape Trafalgar, his last thought of England was of the Abbey. They are the same, but in the spurious Abbey, would you get anything of this effect? You would know those stones were created only yesterday. They are not even as old as you were. Those great figures of the past knew nothing of them. You could have no illusions in a place like that. It would be quite interesting to look at, but you'd feel nothing. You could not make yourself pretend to feel anything. I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job explaining myself, but there are all sorts of different ethical implications of these machines, which seem silly and lighthearted at the beginning of the book as they're making copies of paintings and sculptures and pieces of art like that. And quite useful things when they're going and they're taking a medicine that would take hours and hours and months to work on. They can go and take one little vial and reproduce it 1,000-fold. That's nice and easy, but as things move throughout the book and things get more real and sadder and darker, the implications just get worse. And I don't think you get... He doesn't serve up to you an answer. If you had a machine that could make copies, this is something that could happen. Is this good? Is this bad? Is the original, is the copy the same or as good as the original? This is not a question that he answers. What he does is he shows you the different sides. And he leaves you with the doctor's perspective because the doctor's the narrator. But it's not like he's saying the doctor's perspective is right. These are dangerous things that we play with science. It's a beautiful book. This is the sort of book. Well, I love the genre science fiction. This is the sort of book where putting categories onto things, like calling this a science fiction book, seems a little, I don't know if misleading is the right word, but I'm uncertain about how helpful it is. The only thing about this that's science fiction is the machine that copies things. Besides that, it is our world. And I feel as if this book was not labeled science fiction, but was labeled literature, it might have a higher appreciation in the literary world. Obviously, this British library thought it's a classic, and it definitely is. It definitely belongs in the science fiction classic, but I think it's almost good enough where it might be one of those things where non-sci-fi readers could read it and get some stuff out of it. Anyway, thanks for watching.